Hey everyone, today we're diving into one of the wildest business stories out of India in recent memory, the absolutely explosive rise of Patanjali Ayurved.
Okay, let's just start with this number, 105.61 billion rupees. That was their revenue for the 2017 financial year. But here's the crazy part. That was a 100% jump from the year before. I mean, can you imagine? That kind of growth just doesn't happen. It left some of the biggest companies in the world completely shell-shocked. So that's the big question, right? How on earth did a company basically run by a yoga guru take on and challenge the biggest, most powerful brands on the planet? You know, this quote from Patanjali's MD, Acharya Balkrishna, pretty much sums it up. We never had a business plan. We don't know markets or marketing. I mean, wow. This wasn't some strategy cooked up in a fancy boardroom. This was something else entirely. A philosophy that was about to turn the whole market on its head.
All right, so let's get into it. How did this upstart get to 100 billion rupees? The numbers themselves tell a pretty incredible story.
And when you look at this chart, I mean, that's not a growth curve. That's a rocket launch. It's basically a vertical line. We're talking about going from around 4.5 billion rupees in 2013 to over 105 billion just 4 years later. That's not just growth. That's the kind of explosion that completely changes the game for everyone.
So, what was the secret sauce here? What was their winning formula? Well, it wasn't just one magic bullet. It was actually a really smart three-part strategy that just perfectly tapped into what Indian consumers were thinking and feeling. Yeah, this was no accident. It all came down to three things. First, their focus on Ayurveda and all-natural products. Second, this powerful Swadeshi, or Made in India appeal. And third, a pricing strategy that just completely shook up the competition. Let's dig into each one. Okay, first up, Ayurveda. This is this ancient Indian system of medicine, all about herbal remedies and a healthy life. And, you know, this was happening right when people everywhere were starting to get a little wary of chemical-heavy products. Patanjali didn't need to create the back-to-nature trend. It was already there. They just stepped in and became its most authentic champion.
All right, pillar number 2 was Swadeshi. Now, this is a really powerful idea in India. It literally means of one's own country, and it has deep roots in the fight for independence. It's all about national pride and supporting local. And boy, did Patanjali tap into that feeling.
And look at this slogan, be a part of Mahatma Gandhi's Swadeshi dream. I mean, that's just genius. Suddenly buying a tube of toothpaste wasn't just buying toothpaste, it was a patriotic statement. You felt like you were contributing to the country. How can a giant multinational company even begin to compete with that kind of emotional pull?
And then there was the pricing, the third piece of the puzzle. And this is so smart. It wasn't just, let's be cheaper. No, it was way more surgical. Take honey, for example. They came in and slashed the price, way cheaper than the main competitor, just to grab customers. But then you look at something like ghee or clarified butter, where people think a higher price means better quality, and they actually charged more. That shows they really understood how people think.
Okay, so you can imagine the scene in the boardrooms of the big guys, right? They were caught completely flat-footed, but they weren't just going to roll over and let this happen. The giants were starting to wake up, and they were ready to fight back. And here's the thing. Patanjali didn't just take their customers. They changed the entire conversation. All of a sudden, natural and Ayurvedic were the buzzwords. Every single major company had to start talking about how their products were natural. They were forced to play on Patanjali's field, by Patanjali's rules. Let's look at Hindustan Unilever, HUL, the absolute king of this space in India. They went on the offensive with a huge counterattack. They dusted off their own old Ayurveda brand, Ayush. They went out and bought a popular natural hair care company, and they launched a brand new natural skincare line. This was basically them declaring all-out war. And what about toothpaste? Colgate, the giant in that space, was getting hammered by Patanjali's star product, Dant Kanti. So what did they do? They fought fire with fire. They launched their own herbal toothpaste and then did exactly what Patanjali did to others. They priced it even cheaper. Then Patanjali decided to take on instant noodles. Nestle, who owns the legendary Maggi brand, didn't even hesitate. They just flooded the shelves. They rolled out tons of new noodle flavors, brought back their old soup line. Basically, they just crowded the space to make sure there was no room for a new player.
But, you know, this incredible growth story wasn't perfect, not by a long shot. When you expand that fast, things are bound to break, and for Patanjali, some serious cracks started to show.
For one, their advertising was, let's say, very aggressive. So aggressive that the Advertising Standards Council of India had to step in, again and again, calling them out for misleading ads and making claims they couldn't back up for all sorts of products.
And it wasn't just the ads, there were bigger problems. Some of their products failed quality tests. They faced accusations of mislabeling things. And maybe the biggest issue of all was distribution. I mean, think about this. Patanjali was in about 200,000 stores. HUL, the company they were fighting, was in 6 million. That is a massive, massive gap to close.
So with all these problems, you might think they'd slow down, right? Nope. Patanjali is actually doubling down. Their ambition to be the #1 player in India is stronger than ever.
And just look at what they're planning next. It's wild. They're getting into clothing. They're even talking about Swadeshi jeans. They're jumping into the huge $70 billion dairy market. And they're launching their own bottled water. This fight is so far from over.
And their goals, just as intense as before. They want to double their revenue, again, and massively grow their network of distributors, all in just 1 year. The foot is still slammed on the gas pedal.
So, that's where we're at. And it leaves us with this one huge, fascinating question. Can a brand that's built on tradition and patriotism really, in the long run, beat the biggest, smartest, richest marketing companies in the world? What do you think? Because one thing is for sure, this battle for the Indian consumer has only just begun.